record. Hi there, YouTube. How you doing? Today, we are starting a project that I'm very excited for. It's Doom. We are going to try to recreate, to write a song in the spirit of the Doom soundtracks, like Doom 2016 as well as Doom Eternal. I think mostly Eternal with a little bit of Doom 2016 sprinkled in, but the point is that this is what we're going for. Now, first up, I want to tell you, we are not going to be going for a one-to-one recreation. There are just too many variables that are different when comparing what my setup is to what Mick Gordon's setup is, right? Because I have a wholly different guitar. I'm using like a Jackson Misha Mansour Signature Pro Series, 7-string. It's tuned to drop F, but Mick uses Mayonnaise guitars. He has like bare knuckle pickups, and I have basically the stock passive pickups from the guitar. They're pretty awesome, but it's just like a different tone, right? I'm also using GetGood drums, modern and massive library. He probably uses a lot of different things to get that sound, right? So we're going to be going for the spirit, right? But we're going to we're going to be using a lot of the tricks and methods that he's described in his interviews and behind the music stuff, as well as dissecting them and doing our sort of own spin on it, right? The idea is to come up with something that could fit in with the style of Doom music, right? It won't be a one-to-one thing. That's fine, right? That's number one out of the way. I'm going to be using my notebook. I've got notes. It's a big project, guys. Like, this is going to take us a lot of time, energy, focus, but it's going to be awesome. I mean, I cannot, and this is where I gush, right? So I cannot overstate how much I love Mick Gordon's work on these two soundtracks. Like, I love kind of all his work, but these two soundtracks in particular mean a lot for me. The games themselves are amazing. It's actually, if it weren't for Mick Gordon's soundtrack for Doom 2016, I wouldn't have given Doom 2016 a chance, right? I never thought that a game made in the 2010s could evoke the same feelings that the original Doom game gave me when I was like, I don't know, 12 or whatever. But it did. And the soundtrack convinced me of that. And let me tell you why. Now, you see the long hair, you kind of assume, well, because it's metal, dude. No. Actually, the reason why the soundtrack hits very close to home for me is because it combines two of the things that mean a lot to me as a musician and meant a lot to me growing up. And that is like the music of Pink Floyd in the sense of like concept albums. Right, so, and we're talking here about just the soundtrack version, right? So it's like the concept album format as well as the sort of progressive nature, like a combination of styles. And also because of the perfect integration of basically 9 Inch Nails, right? And sort of the sort of industrial scene in the 90s, right? As you know, that's The Fragile over there, my favorite album from 9 Inch Nails. Right, and my second favorite album of all time. So it's actually not because of the metal, although it is a nice addition, right? And what I love about it is that it's a combination of like the industrial, the sound design, right, the feeling, the aggressiveness, but also the modern metal tone and composition, right? It's got that gent, if you will, element in there, and low-tuned guitars and stuff like that. So I cannot gush enough, and I just love the complexity of the thing, right? Each song you listen to has tons of layers, tons of stuff happening. So it's just amazing to me, right? And having that sort of 90s industrial, like Ministry, 9 Inch Nails, as I said, thing going on is just, it's just perfect in every way. Um, so I have only love for Mick Gordon, his work, and for the guys and gals at id, who made possible Doom and Doom Eternal. I love both of them. I do admit that it is a bit of a crime against humanity that we don't have like an official release of the soundtrack from Doom Eternal made like or arranged by Mick Gordon. Chad Mossholder did a fantastic job either way. So again, only love for everybody involved with making Doom 2016 and making Doom Eternal happen. Now, let's switch over to the Cubase and I'll show you my setup over here and then we'll get into it, right? And transition. Here we go. Okay, so usually you know that I like to start from like just an empty template, right? Just nothing. However, I had to do a bit of work to set these things up, right? Beforehand. So so damn that thunder though. Okay. So here's what we've got, right? We've got the guitar set up, like the two. I quad tracked the guitar, so I've got 4 tracks of guitars in here. I don't have any processing on them, right? I just created some routing. So these guitars are going to the rhythm guitars bus over here. I've got my bass and I've got my DI track feeding into bass high and bass low. And I'm gonna get into explaining that in just a second. Another thing is the drums, and this is why I had to take quite a bit of time to set these up. Needs more tambourine. Hey, horseradish. Yeah, I think this will be a rare exception to the rule, and I will actually not use tambourine on this song. Hey, horseradish, how you doing? How is your Sunday going, and how's your week been going? I hope you're awesome. We're awesome. I was just talking a little bit about the setup that we have here. So I took basically all of yesterday. It took me like 12 hours to set this up and also record guitars, bass, edit everything, tune everything, and I'll get into that in just a second. Now, the drum routing is one of the things that actually takes a lot of time to do, so that's why I did that beforehand. So now you're just hearing me talk about it for 2 minutes instead of seeing me do it for 2 hours, right? I'm also very rusty at doing this. I haven't done like a rock track or something that incorporates bass, drums, and guitars for quite a while. So basically what I'm using is GetGood Drums Modern and Massive. Over here, Kirk messing around with the laptop. Well, don't mess around with it too hard. It'll go blind. Anyway. Anyway, so I'm using GetGood Drums Modern and Massive, and why I have this instead of like Invasion or the stock GGD is because this drum kit has a way of sounding very huge, very modern, and very in your face. And I love it for that. It's going through Contact. And if you want me, like, if you guys, either here or on YouTube, watching after the fact or whatever, want me to go into detail and make a video about how I routed this, I can. But basically, I'm generating the outputs right from the Contact, and I'm sending them to their dedicated channels over here. Everything that you see in like orange is the dedicated channel, and then in gray you have the summing buses, right? And then all of these are getting fed into the drums bus. I have no processing on it. I've done a bit of a selection on this kick and snare just to get us started, and then we'll tweak from there. Now, let's get into guitars and bass. First of all, I quad-tracked the guitars. What I did is I recorded 7 riffs, and we're gonna choose from them what riffs we like and what we're going to keep in the song, right? Let me just import these quickly over here, and then we'll go into more detail about the tracking and all of that, right? So let me just import the audio files. And I did all of this in like a separate project, right? Because we needed to do that instead of wasting time. Yeah. Okay. Convert and copy. Do it. Different tracks. Okay. Let's see if these imported correctly. Let me just turn them down quite a tad. Oh, they are. So. Okay. Cool. I also need to get in the bass DI and the sub reinforcement in here. Right, so we're gonna do like a mono. And I'm gonna explain all of this in just a sec. Bass DI tuned and sub reinforcement. Different tracks. Okay. Right. So let's talk a little bit about the guitars. So again, I'm using my Jackson 7-string. It's the Misha Mansour Pro Series. I can't remember the exact model number, but there you go. So it's not like the super expensive USA model. It's the It's the cheaper version, right? It's like also. Oh, wait a minute, horseradish. Oh, nice. I hope they. I bet they look awesome. Hold on, just a sec. Pro tip: never work on your music stuff and also have a glass that's filled to the brim. It's a miracle I didn't spill that on me, to be honest. Anyway, those beats were awesome. Made me think of a demon slaying Pac-Man. Okay, hold on. Right. So this is my guitar DI, right? What is a DI? A DI is basically just a direct signal from a guitar. It's clean. It has no effects on it. Let me just pan this in the center and make it a tad louder so that you can hear it. And that's basically what it sounds like. My guitar is very scratchy. I know this, and I like this about it. So it has a sort of, it has like a chainsaw sound to it, just baked in, which I enjoy. Look, I've been a guitarist for many years. Louder. We'll make it louder. Hold on. Just a little bit. All right. So, I've been a guitarist for many years. Unfortunately, one of the things that I never quite got is how to make a tone that sounds anything else but like a really genty, chainsaw-y like tone. And I like that. And you know what? I'm owning it. That's gonna be my thing, right? Now, about guitar tracking. When you're tracking guitar, usually you'd have a DI, which is like a separate little box. You plug into that, and it kind of sets the impedance in such a way that it kind of cleans up the signal. It makes things quieter so that you can ride the gain on, so you can turn the gain up on your interface. Unfortunately, my DI crapped out on me. I think it's adding much more noise than it's cleaning up at this point. So I did not use that. I plugged straight into my interface. This works. If you don't have a DI, it's fine. But it is worth investing into a more expensive DI, a very good DI, to get a very clean signal and to get the full range of your tone. Unfortunately, mine was cheap and it crapped out after many years, actually, though. So I had to do that. So that's why the signal is a bit hot, and you can hear that, but it's still usable, I would say. Bass tracking. Oh, and we are tuned to drop F, right? And this is a tuning. Usually I could use like a drop pedal. I have 2 of them. But the problem with drop pedals is that the lower you go, the more it affects your tone, and it makes things darker and not sound as clear and crisp, right? Which is what we want for the sound that we're going for over here. We want a clear, loud, and crisp sound. Now, here's the bass DI. Now, this bass DI, it's a functional bass DI. The bass that we're using is a Jackson something. It's a 5-string bass, and it's tuned actually up. It's like in drop A sharp, so that the lowest note on the 2nd string is an F, because we are tuned to F. And I want that sort of an open string bounce. And again, if you guys want me to do a more in-depth video about guitar tracking and stuff like that, we'll get to it. We can certainly do that separately. I've also got a sub reinforcement. I don't know if this is coming through, unless you've got like a sub or better headphones, I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. But this is basically exactly what the bass is playing. But it's played on just a sine wave, an honest to God clean sine wave. And why we're doing this is that we want our bass to be sort of low end of our bass to be super exact in note, tonality, and clean as all heck. For reasons that I'm going to explain when we get to it. Hold on. Right, what else? Another thing that's super important. So it took me like 10 hours to do these. Just a couple riffs. Why? Because it's quad tracking and everything needs to be edited perfectly to the grid. Now, I'm not a very proficient guitar player, so this is why I rely a lot on editing, and I make no qualms about it. I do not pretend to be like the super sick guitar player. I'm not. I think of myself more as a composer or producer, so I had to do what it took to get that sound. And if you want the modern sound, and hold on, I'm gonna switch to face cam for this. And hear me out, local bands. I love you, you know that. But if you want a modern upfront sound, editing is the way to go. You'll never, like, you might be able to play super perfectly, but it's very rare that this is the case. And you want it to be as close, as dead on as possible, right? Like, otherwise, because everything needs to hit at the same time. Drums, guitars, bass, everything needs to, just, right? That's what you want. Because we're going to turn everything loud. We're going to make everything sound aggressive. We're going to have a lot of compression. So we want to make sure that everything is hitting at the same time, triggering that compression at the same time, and getting that upfront sound. If you don't edit your stuff, it's very hard to get that modern sound, right? And it is 2020, just so that you know. Okay, but I love you, local bands. I actually do. And I hope that you continue to make awesome music. And let me actually show you this. So here's the waveform for our guitars and our bass, right? So look at this accent over here. You can see that, okay, it's not super perfect. It could be, I edited quite quickly because my point was to get this done and out there and ready for us to play with today instead of watching me do this for 10 hours. But you can see that basically everything is kind of hitting at the same time. Yeah, if I just sort of realign to the grid, which is not actually working for some reason. Okay, yeah. Our accents are coming at sort of the same time, right? There's a bit of variation because, well, you kind of need that to get a wide sound, but we're mostly hitting at the same time, yeah? Okay. Now, what else? So editing is important. Tuning. Okay. The bass is auto-tuned. But Dan, doesn't that kill the tone? Look, what we're going to be doing with this low, with this high, with this DI track is actually we're not going to use it for our low end. We're going to use it for our high end. And we're going to routing it through a lot of distortion. You can see that you can't really hear any editing or auto-tuning happening because it's actually kind of subtle, but it does help a lot to make sure that everything is on the same note. Tune your guitars. If you don't have, intonate your guitars, tune them properly, tune them after each take, make sure everything is playing the same note at the same time. That's all I want to say. And I've been talking for 20 minutes about this setup instead of actually jumping right into it. So, okay. And for our low end, we're going to be using a VST instrument anyway. So you could do it with the DI as well, but I prefer to use a sub reinforcement just so that everything sounds heavier, right? Okay. So, let's do this. Let's set up everything so that we can actually choose what riffs we're going to use. There's another thing that I should have done, which is import the MIDI, but that's going to be fine. Okay, so the DI we're going to send to our bass high. The sub reinforcement we're going to send to our bass low. right? And let's just sub VST. Okay, so now all our routing is done. So if I were to listen to just the bass, you see how like that sub is reinforcing the bass and making it sound fatter? That's exactly what we want. Now, we're gonna set up some guitar tones just for us to get going here, right? So I'm just gonna jump right into it so that we can select some riffs, and then we're gonna get into actually writing our song, right? So and I haven't written anything on the drums yet, right? So nothing is written. So just because I set up, I stayed 12 hours before recording this, setting everything up, does not mean that I made any creative decisions. All I did was just have everything set up so that we can just start, right? Whew, and I know how that sounds after 20 minutes of me talking. Just start. Okay. What we're going to be using for our sort of guitar tones, and this is just to get us going, right? All we're going to do is we're going to just put in Toneforge Misha Mansour from the lovely Joey Sturgis. Hold on. And this is a crazy plugin. Like, you see a lot of knobs, dials, and stuff like that. We don't really care about that. We are just going to set up so that we have, and I'll explain everything I'm doing in just a second. I want to make a creative decision first. Like, I want to hear the guitars just soloed out, and I've got nothing on my master bus. It's super raw. As I said, I promised that I'm going to show you the whole process, warts and all. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to explain what I'm doing as we move through this. So we just want to make some creative decisions. We just want to see, okay, what the heck are we doing? What's going to be our riff? What's going to be like the basis of our song? Now, let me just save this. Hopefully this won't destroy our ears. That sounds terrible. I know. We're going to make it sound better. Don't worry. So, okay. We've got sound. Let's listen to these riffs. We're actually going to listen with the bass as well. Just so that we get an idea, yeah? There's actually one thing I'd like to put on the master bus just to make sure that we're not clipping or destroying anything. I'm just going to set up a master. The FGX, which is just a limiter that we use for mastering, and I'm not gonna touch it. I just want it to be there so that we are just not clipping, not destroying everything, yeah? Hold up. Let me just mute these extra guitars and... Okay, and now, finally, now, it's very important. One of the main things I've started doing more recent, like in the last few years, is just setting up my brain for different tasks. My brain does not need to think about mixing right now. My brain does not need to think about tones. My brain needs to think creatively and select what is objectively, as close to objectively as possible, the best riff, the money riff. The riff that's gonna get us going, like get our fists pumping and just go nuts, right? And because this riff is gonna form the basis of our song, right? This is what we're gonna start out with. So let's just listen to all these riffs I've prepared, and then we'll just choose one, yeah? Okay, so that was riff 1. Okay, so already, like, the first riff feels like it's more involved, while this second riff feels more like a sort of nu metal-y, dragging type riff. Like, this could be useful for like a breakdown, right? Where we just want to bob our heads to something more simplistic, but and it also helps that it has fewer notes, so I could potentially put in more leads and stuff like that. But the first riff, I still feel is the best, right? It's of these two. Let's listen to the third one. Okay, this riff I think feels like a fast one. It doesn't make me feel like it's a riff where I can just sit back and bob my head. It's more like a riff where we need to go nuts, yeah? Horseradish, cheers. Thank you, Horseradish, for keeping me around. Right, so still not super convinced that this is gonna be the money riff. This could be useful for like the second part, and we'll talk about structure when we get to it. Let's see the fourth riff. Okay, this riff is cool as a bridge. I could use that for a bridge or a verse or a build-up or something. I think would be useful. Okay, there's a little editing glitch here that I missed, but don't worry, we'll fix it later. This riff, I can take it or leave it, really. I don't think this is a very good riff, really. I think it might have its uses, but Let's see the last one. Still not super great. For this one, I actually tuned down to D sharp, drop D sharp. Right. So what's the first thing going through your mind right now? It sounds like crap. That's fine. We don't care about sound right now. We just care about seeing potential in something that is so raw and unrefined. Like, if it could convince us of its potential in this state, right? It can sort of inspire me to be like, okay, I'm gonna make you sound awesome, right? Now, the riff that actually gets my Bud Light. I'm not sponsored, don't sue me, I don't know, it was just a stupid joke. I do it for the memes, right? The riff that gets my blood pumping, it's this one. I think the first one is still the money riff that we can start out with. It gives me that sort of the only thing that they fear is you vibe. Like, it has that bounce. This one is too frenetic for me. And this one does not feel strong enough to be like a main riff, like an A riff, yeah? Yeah, we're gonna go with the first one. Alrighty then, let's do this. So we've selected our riff, which is cool. Now, we just need to build up to it. We need to set up like an intro. We need to get a vibe going. And then we're just gonna go. We're just gonna go. Okay. I'm gonna cut the video here for YouTube, just for people like if they're watching this after the fact, where like if you just want to jump straight into, okay, we're writing music, we're making things happen, you can just jump to the next part. So cheers.